Masechet Nedarim, Daf Kaf Bet. We begin the daf with a few more stories and guidelines on how to undo vows. Then we're going to have a section about the dangers of getting angry. And then we'll go back to some various cases of undoing vows. So we're dealing with two different strategies to resolving vows, absolving vows. One is called harata, which is that one regrets. I regret that I ever made it because I was in a state of anger or something. Or the other is a petach, meaning unforeseen circumstances. When I made it, I did not realize that it would what it would take into account, and therefore I made it under false pretenses I did not realize. And so we saw an opinion above that the harata does not work. That's not enough, and you should find a petach. But there were other sages that actually used both. And so we have stories of each. So here's the next story in a series. We saw three just now. So here's yet another one. Bar berate de Rabbi Yanai Saba, atal kameh de Rabbi Yanai Saba. Rabbi Yanai the elder had a grandson. His grandson made a vow that he wanted to absolve, so he came to his grandfather. Amarle, ilu hava yadat de patchin pinkasach umeshameshin be'obadach minadart. So the grandfather told the grandson, if you had known that when you make a vow, up in heaven they open the record books. Pinkas comes from a Greek word, pinax, which means a wax tablet. Here's a painting of one, a wax tablet, a piece of wood covered with wax, and you could use a stylus to etch into the wax. And that way you can have something written, but then you can smooth it over and rewrite on it. So it was a rewritable surface. And so these were used in schools, and people would write on pinaxes, so to keep records. So the idea is that there's a heavenly record book. It says, did you know that every time you make a vow up in heaven, they open up your record books and they examine them to see all your deeds, to see how worthy you are or not. If you knew that, would you make a vow? And the grandson said, no, I didn't know that. If I had known that, Amar le la v'shariyah, I would never have made the vow in the first place. So this is a petach. Shows that it was under unforeseen circumstances. He didn't know the outcome of this, and so he was able to undo it. Okay, what's the idea? What does the making a neder have to do with the heavenly records? The idea is as follows. If someone wants to take upon themselves an extra responsibility, besides all the mitzvot in the Torah, they're making a neder to make a further obligation upon themselves. So up in heaven they say, he's taking extra obligation. Oh, let's see if he does all the regular ones. You know, like a teacher, a student comes and says, can I have extra homework? What, you want extra work? You already do all the work perfectly? Let's see, right? Let's open up and examine in detail. So nobody wants their deeds to be examined in such detail. And so therefore, he says, no, I would not want to. And that is a legitimate petach. At least that's one that was used by Rabbi Yanai Saba. Rabbi Abba says, what's a verse that we can bring that shows that this is an opening that one can use? From Mishleh it says, Nedarim, after one makes a neder, levaker, then they check his deeds. So from here we learn that once a person makes a neder, from heaven, they go and check his deeds. The simple reading is that a person who makes nedarim, who does things that he vows, maybe he doesn't fulfill, then he should make teshuvah. But here we're saying in heaven they will check out his deeds. So that's how we know that. And now if the person learns that, he'll regret that he made the vow. But the Talmud itself says, even though the Yanai did that, we don't use that, right? He did that, but this is an extraordinary strategy, and we're not going to do that. Why? A possibility is that if you use this, and then you can never have any vows, because you could always tell a person this, and they always undo the vow. But the Mefarshim say something else, that this is too strong of a strategy. In order for a petach to work, the person actually has to, in their own minds, regret that they made this and say they would not have done that. But in this case, because the person just might feel embarrassed or overawed by the question, right? Would you still have made the vow if you knew that in heaven they're going to check your deeds? Maybe the person in their minds would say, oh yes, I actually would have, right? I really felt so strongly, so angry about this person that I would have made the vow anyway. But even if the person didn't mean it, they might be embarrassed to say, yes, I would have made it anyway. And they would say no. So in their heart, they did not absolve themselves because they were not really sorry, but they would say that they're sorry. So the rabbi here has to be careful not to say something that's too strong that everyone would feel obligated to say, oh, I would never have done that. So that's why in practice we don't do it. Okay, and now we mentioned one item that strategy that a rabbi used, but that we don't do anymore. Here's another one. כל הבוטה ראוי לדוקרו בחרב, אלא לשון חכמים מרפא. So here's an example. Rabbi Bar Chana and Rabbi Yochanan said that Rabban Gamliel had an elder. The elder came to him and says, can you undo this vow? And Rabban Gamliel quoted the pasuk in Mishleh, someone who speaks and says a vow, it's like a piercing of the sword. You're like stabbing yourself by making a vow. But the language of wise people is healthy. So the simple reading is that the people that speak evil is like a sword, and wise people, they speak nice things and brings healing. But we're applying it to Nedarim, that someone who makes a neder injures himself like a stab wound, but when if you come to a sage, marpeh, they can heal it by absolving the vow. So, what do we learn from here? Anyone who expresses a neder is worthy of being pierced by a sword. But luckily, Hachamim can come and undo it for them. So this is what he told the elder. Did you recognize that by saying a vow, you are making yourself worthy of being stabbed by a sword? And the guy's like, oh, that's very serious. I never knew that pasuk. I didn't realize that interpretation. I would never have made a vow if I knew that it was as serious as a stab wound. So he says, okay, since you didn't realize it, then that's undone. But this is what this Rabban Gamliel did. Nevertheless, we don't act in that way. Because it's too strong of a strategy, and people would say, oh, they wouldn't have done it, even if actually they would have done it. And here's another strategy that was once used, but that we don't use. Tanya Rabbi Natan Omer, Hanoder ki'ilu bana bama, v'mekayemo ki'ilu makrib alav korban. Beresha patrinan, besefa, Abaye amar patrinan, Rabba amar la patrinan. So Rabbi Natan in the Braita says that someone who makes a vow, it's as if he builds a bama, which means an unauthorized altar. You can only build a mizbeach on the Temple Mount. You're not allowed to build a mizbeach in your backyard or anywhere else. And that's if you make the neder. If you make and fulfill the neder and don't undo it, then it's like not only you built an unauthorized altar, but you make a korban on it, which is prohibited. You're only allowed to make a korban in the Bet HaMikdash. So this is pretty serious. So to be Natan would undo vows as far in that using this statement. A person would come and says, and he would tell them, did you realize that by making a vow, you're building a bama? A person would say, oh no, I don't want to build a bama. Now what's the conceptual similarity? How is it like building a bama? The idea is like this. There's a proper authorized way to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's through all the mitzvot in the Torah, right? Like serving him through korbanot in the one place in the Bet HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. A person says, I want to add more mitzvot. I want to take upon myself a further obligation or prohibition. So are you doing that? Well, you think it's a good thing to add more, but look at korbanot. You might think that it's a good thing to do korbanot anywhere you are, but in fact, it's prohibited, right? Only do things what the Torah says. Adding anything more mitzvot, saying I'm going to abstain from, whatever, is the same as building a bama. So that's the conceptual similarity. It's enough what the Torah told us to do and not do. Let's focus on that and do that very well. Okay, so this, even though the Binatan did it, we don't use this. Now, which part of it do we not use? Because there's actually two parts of it. So Beresha Patrinan, actually, to tell someone you made a neder, that's like a bama. That you can say, because it's not so scary to have built a bama. And the person said, oh, maybe I would have done that and built a bama anyway. But there is a machloket. The question is about the second part of it. That it's like you actually made a korban. That would be an idolatrous korban to do something outside the mizbeach, very serious. So Besefa Abaye says patrinan, we can use the second, the whole thing, right? The first or the even scarier second half. Rava says no, the second half. That's too embarrassing for a person to deny that they would do that anyway, and so that's why the second one cannot be used. What we just read was the version of Rav Kana. Rav Tibyomi records the machlok between Abaye and Rava slightly differently. And according to him, everyone agrees that in the second statement, if you fulfill this vow, and you go through with it, then it's like you made a korban on a bama. That is something that would be very scary, and everybody would be embarrassed to say that they would do it anyway. And then they're going to say they wouldn't do it, but in their heart they didn't really regret it. So you cannot use that strategy, and everyone agrees. The machlok is about the first one, about making a net in the first place, which is only like building a bama. Building a bama is not as bad as making a sacrifice on the bama. So in that case, Abaye says, yeah, you can use that one. But Rava says, no, even that one, no good. The bottom line is we don't use either of them, not the beginning, not the end. In other words, the halacha is like a Rava, according to the second version here. Another strategy that we do not use is that what is the one that Shemuel did use, Damar Shemuel. Even if a person fulfills a vow, you made a vow and you fulfilled it, still you're called an evil person for putting yourself in such a dangerous predicament. Pasuk in Nedarim says, if you don't make a neder, there'll be no sin against you. So we can learn the opposite. If you do make a neder, even if you fulfill it, then there is a sin. How do we know the person is called a rasha? Because it says the word yechdal, to prevent oneself, here, and it says it in another place, that's pasuk in Devarim. Wicked chase the wicked cease from troubling. So hadelu, also to refrain from, and that's associated with rishaim. So too we transfer the association of rishaim in the pasuk in Yov to Devarim. So anyone who does not refrain from a neder is called a rasha. Amar Rav Yosef, Av anana mitanena, kenidre kesherim, lo amar kelum, kenidre rishaim, nadar ben nazir, bekorban, u bishvuah. We have a braita that proves this, actually a Mishnah, the Mishnah that we saw back on Daf Tet, that says if a person says, I'm going to be like nidre kesherim, this is prohibited to me like the neder that righteous people say, that's not a neder, because righteous people don't make nedarim. And what if you say that I'm going to be prohibited like a neder rishaim, then that is a valid prohibition, because rishaim, that's their way. They're always making swears and vows. And so if he said Nadar as a Nazir, or then he says like, I'm going to be Nazir like Nidre Rishaim, then he is a Nazir. Or Korban, he says something is prohibited, then it's valid. Or Shevuah, and uses as do Rishaim, then all those are valid. So this shows that Nedarim are associated with what wicked people do. A righteous person, that's enough that he commit himself, and he's always honest, so he doesn't have to make a neder in order to be trusted. Amar Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol HaKo'es, Kol Minei Ginam Shotin Bo. Okay, now that we mentioned the subject of things that people do that are very bad and they're called Rishaim, so also someone who gets angry. It's associated with a neder, because a lot of times people make a neder because they're angry and they say, I'm never talking to you again. And they make a swear, or they make a vow. So too, anger leads to all kinds of terrible things. Anyone who gets angry, various types of Gehinam will rule over him. mebesarecha and kohelet. Remove vexation from your heart and put away evil from your flesh. What does it mean, that evil? Hashem has made everything for his purpose. He even made the wicked for the day of evil, right? Hashem is responsible for the wicked. Why did he make them? So that they'll get their punishment one day. That day. What do you mean that day? When they die. Where are they going to go? Gehinam. So there you go. Ra'ah is Gehinam. So anyone who is... so the advice of Kohelet is, remove anger from your heart. That way you will be saved from Ra'ah, meaning Gehinam. לא עוד אלא שהתחתוניות שולטות בו שנאמר ונתן השם לך שם לב רגז וכליון עיניים ודעה בו נפש. And furthermore, person who does not get who gets angry will get hemorrhoids, because the pasuk says Hashem will give you a trembling heart, failing of light, failing of eyes, and languishing of soul. This is in the curses in Kitabo. What does that mean? What is something that causes your eyes to go dim and soul to languish? It's the pain that's associated with hemorrhoids, which is actually mentioned explicitly in the set of curses. It's so bad we don't even read it. We say kri uktiv because it's such a terrible thing to say in public. Ula b'miskeh le'ad Yisrael itlavu le'teren b'nei hozai behadeh. Okay, fantastic story now. Listen to this. Ula was one of the sages that used to travel from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel and back often. And he was, while he was going from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, two people that live in Bnei Hozai were with him. They're traveling together. One of them got angry at the other. They got into a heated argument, and one of them came and killed the other, stabbed him. So the murderer turns to Ula, says, what do you think? Did I do a good thing? Right? Didn't he deserve it? Now, Ula, I'm sure, was thinking, you people are crazy. How do I get myself out of this? This guy's a murderer. But instead he said, yes, you did very good that you murdered him. Not only that, you should stab him again in the neck, right? Make him die faster. Make sure he's really dead. This is what Ula told him. Okay, now, so when he got to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan heard the story, and Ula came to Rabbi Yochanan, told him the story, and Ula felt guilty. He says, perhaps God forbid, I helped out the hands of sinners by telling him, oh, you killed him, Chazaku Baruch, good job, do it again, right? Maybe I'm a part of this terrible sin. Rabbi Yochanan, however, comforted him and says, no, you saved your life. You had to do that. Can you imagine if Ula said, why'd you do that? You're a murderer. I'm going to go report you. So this guy would have killed Ula also. So Ula, at that point, certainly had to make believe and say that he was with him. Yeah, you did good. You had to self-defense, right? And kill him again. So he would look like he's on the side. In order to save his life. To save one's life, I mean, you can't kill someone to save your life, but you can tell a murderer he did a good job to save your life, and afterwards you can go to the authorities and be a witness against them. Now Rabbi Yochanan, when he heard the story, he was surprised. Ula, you did a fine job. He was surprised that a person can get so angry as to come to murder someone. And he quotes the pasuk in Nedarim that says Hashem will give you there in Bavel, when you go into exile, you'll get ragaz, you'll get anger. So that pasuk is talking about when you go into exile. He understands people in exile, they get very angry and heated, and they could come to do violence. But in Eretz Yisrael, this shouldn't happen. And, this story was when you were on your way to Eretz Yisrael. How could someone get so angry? Okay, very interesting theory that in Eretz Yisrael, everybody's calm and nice and peaceful. Nobody gets angry in Israel. Ula explained, no, we were still on our way. We didn't cross over the Jordan River yet to Eretz Yisrael. Bechazai, by the way, is over here. It's a pretty far place, so they were traveling all the way, and this was while they were still in Bavel. That's when this murder story, that's why he got so angry. If they had crossed over into Israel, then surely the peaceful culture of Israel would have calmed them down. כל הכועס אפילו שכינה אינה חשובה כנגדו, שנאמר, רשע כגו באפו בל ידרוש, אין אלוהים כל מזימותיו. Anyone who gets angry, even the Shekhinah itself is not going to be important to him. Even if the Shekhinah was right there, when a person gets to an angry state, they don't care about anyone or anything, and they would even do things against their creator. As the pasuk in Tehillim says, Rasha, the evil person, in the height of his anger, he says, there is no God, and that's what his thoughts are. Rabbi Yirmiyah מדפתי אמר, משכך תלמודו, מוסיף טיפשות, שנאמר כי כעס בחק כסילים ינוח, וכתיב וכסיר לפרוס איוולת. And not only that, a person who gets angry forgets all of his learning, and he becomes foolish. He just says crazy things, silly things, and we learn this from Pasuk in Kohelet and one from Mishleh. Anger rests in the bosom of fools, and a fool unfolds folly. He just expresses himself and he shows how foolish he is because of his anger. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, v'yadua shavonotav merubin mezichiyotav, shenemar u'bal chema rav pasha. Also, if you see a person get angry, that's revealed that their sins are more than their merits. They might look like a righteous person, but the fact that they can get so angry shows that really their negative outweighs, as the pasuk in Mishleh says, bal chema, someone who gets angry, rav, more is their pesha, is their sin. אמר רב אדה ברבי חנינא, אלמלא לא חטאו ישראל, לא ניתן להם אלא 5 חומשי תורה, כספר יהושע בלבד. Amazing statement. If Israel had not sinned, and instead they went into the land of Israel and remained faithful and did justice and took care of the widow and served Hashem properly, then they would not have needed the rest of the Nevi'im and Ketuvim. They would have been sufficient with the 5 books, Chamisha Chumshei Torah. Obviously you need that. That's all the laws. That's the basic Berit. And Yehoshua. Why do they need Yehoshua? She'erkan shel Eretz Yisrael hu. Because in Yehoshua, it tells us about the arrangement of Eretz Yisrael. This tribe conquered this area, and that tribe conquered that. They knew what they need to know how to settle. But the rest of Nevi'im and Ketuvim would not be necessary, because all that are the Nevi'im coming, admonishing the people, make teshuvah, you're doing wrong, this is what's going to happen, you're going to go into exile. And so all those Nevi'im, all those books, we would not have needed them. Would have been enough for just to have the 6 books. So we quote the similar pasuk, right? Because with much, this is not the same pasuk as before. Because with great wisdom is also great anger. In other words, when great anger comes to people, because we sin and Hashem is angry at us, also great wisdom, the wisdom of all those books. So there's a kind of toss-up that even though better if we hadn't sinned, and therefore, we wouldn't have been exiled, but now that we did sin, there is some benefit of having all those books, so we have great wisdom from them. It's kind of an analogy of Gan Eden, where by sinning and eating the fruit, we get exiled from Gan Eden, but we also gain the knowledge that was in the tree of knowledge. So it's, overall better not to have done that. But now that we have done that, we do have these extra books that we can learn from, and then we can learn teshuvah, we can learn how to come back, and we can learn other good skills of how to survive in exile and how to return to the land of Israel, even though we wouldn't have needed those skills if we hadn't sinned in the first place. Amar Rabbi, as is, by the way, very interesting, because the Samaritans only have those 6 books, the 5 books of Moses, and they have a version of Yehoshua that's very similar to ours. Amar Rabbi Aseh, en nizkakin le'elokei Yisrael, chutz mikonam ishti nehenet dli, sheganva et kisi v'shehiketa et beni, v'noda shelo ganva v'shelo hika. Okay, that was the end of the anger section, and now we're going back to the section about various types of Nedarim, and the following neder is so strong that you can't undo it. So if someone takes a Shevuah, a vow, a neder, in the name of Elokei Yisrael, this is very strong, and you can't undo it, right? If the person comes to you, I made a vow in the name of the God of Israel, can't undo it, except if they say, korban, tkunam, this is like a korban, is my wife, She's prohibited to me from having any benefit because she stole my wallet or because she hit my son. And this guy uses the name Elokei Yisrael in his vow. And then it turns out that she didn't sin. She didn't steal the wallet. He misplaced it. She didn't hit the kid. He just bumped his head. And so he made the vow and with false pretenses. It was totally wrong. In that case, we want to save their marriage, because if he can't have benefit from each other, then they have to get divorced. So in order to save a marriage, we can even erase God's name with a sotah. So even if a person says God's name itself, nevertheless, we undo the vow, even though that will mean that he said Elokei Israel in vain. So in order to save the marriage. So a woman came to Rav Aseh, and he said, she wanted to undo her vow. He said, tell me, what did you say? And she said, Be'elokei Israel. I used the phrase in the name of the God of Israel. Amar la, inadat b'mohi shikinoi ba'ama, mizdakikna lach. And so here, the rabbi says, if you used a nickname, b'mohi, right? We saw that earlier. This is a nickname, let's say, by Moshe, by whatever this means. Then, since that's only a nickname, I would have dealt with you and I would have undone your vow. But now that you didn't use a nickname, you should always use a nickname. Remember that for the future. Because you used Elokei Israel itself, not attending to your request. Nothing I could do to help you. Okay, another fun story. We have so many fun stories about people insisting on things using vows. So Rav Kahana went to the home of Rav Yosef. And Rav Yosef, the host, says, come, Rav Kahana, come taste something. He says, no, I swear by the master, Mourad, of everything, meaning by God, by the master of everything, I will not eat anything from you. And so Rav Yosef, the host, repeats the same words. Lo mari kula la timat le. No, by the master of all, you will not eat anything. Now, that's the end of the story. What's going on? We understand why Rav Kahana, the guest, said, I promise I'm not going to eat anything. Right, because he doesn't want to come in and he wants to stop insisting. But how come Rav Yosef, the host, said, yeah, I vow that you're not going to eat anything? What is he now, like angry? He's insulted that he didn't come and now he's making a vow that, no, you can't eat anything? No, no, he was saying it rhetorically. Rav Yosef was simply repeating what Rav Kahana had said. He said, no, really? By the master of all, you're not going to eat anything? Well, what can I do? I guess that you really mean it, that you're not going to eat anything since you took a vow in such a strong way. See, if he didn't mean it, we saw above cases where the guest makes a vow, but they don't really mean it. They just mean they're not going to eat a whole meal, but they can eat something. Fine, if you want to say that, use a nickname or some other formula. If you're going to say Mari Kula, similar to Elokei Israel, then you must really mean it. So, okay, I guess you can't eat. All right, hopefully you'll come over another time. Mar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman, Hilcheta, Potchin B'charatav Niskakin, LeElokei Israel. Rav Nachman says the bottom line is, we do use regret to undo vows, even though on the previous daf we saw one statement that said regret is not enough, you have to find a petach. But then we saw a whole bunch of stories of rabbis who did use regret. Right? That's enough to say, oh, when I was angry when I said it, I was in the wrong state of mind, I regret it. That's fine, you can use that. And if someone uses the phrase Elokei Israel, even though we just said here that except for husband and wife, we do not use that. We do not undo a vow. Nevertheless, halacha is that we will undo a vow even if they said Elokei Israel. Mishtabach le Rava Rav Nachman berav Sechora d'Adam Gadol hu. Rava once praised his student Rav Sechora to Rav Nachman, right? In other words, Rava told Rav Nachman, Rav Sechora, he's a great person, right? He's a great student. Amalo, he wrote him a letter of recommendation. Amalo, k'shevod yadcha Hebiehu liyadi. Rav Nachman says, look, great, I'd love to meet him. When the Rav Sechora comes to you, tell him to come over, I want to meet him. Turns out Rav Sechora actually had a vow that he wanted to resolve. Maybe that's why he asked for the letter of recommendation. And so Rava said that told Rav Sechora, go to Rav Nachman. And Rav Sechora goes to Rav Nachman and says, hey, can you help me undo my vow? So Rav Nachman said, did you make a vow with such and such in mind? We don't know what the vow is, we don't know exactly what he said, right? But did you have in mind when you said, for example, you're not going to eat sugar? Did you realize that your salad dressing has sugar in it? Yes, I did know, right? So I can't undo the vow that way. Okay, did you have in mind that this other snack that you like has sugar in it? Yes, I realized. He asked him a lot of things, right? Did you realize that your flavored coffee has sugar in it and you couldn't have that? He says, yes, I did know that. And so again and again, Rav Nachman got annoyed. He got upset. He's trying his best, and it looks like Rav Sechora is not helping out. Rav Sechora keeps refusing. He's refusing to be helped. He's giving Rav Nachman a hard time. Rav Nachman's trying to help him. Rav Nachman gave up, and he says, go back home, go back to your tent. Sorry, I can't help you, right? Everything. I try 100 things to undo your vow, and nothing is working. As soon as Rav Sechora left, then he said, oh, now I have an opening. And he undid his own vow. What's his own vow? As follows. Rabbi Omer, Ezehi derech yeshara sheyavo lo ha'adam, kol she'tiferet lo oseh, v'tiferet lo min ha'adam. This is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Rabbi says, what is a proper path that a person should choose? Something that brings glory to his maker and glory to your fellow human beings. In other words, you should be righteous in the eyes of God and in the eyes of others. Even if you're so pious in the eyes of God, but people look at you and look down upon you, then you're not doing the right thing. And vice versa also. So what does that have to do with him? Look how Rav Sechora says about himself. Because of the way I acted, and I came to Rav Nachman and I made Rav Nachman upset, it must be something I did wrong. If I knew at the time that I made the vow that I'm not going to eat sugar, that's going to cause me to now come before Rav Nachman to try to undo it. And he was going to ask me a lot of questions. And I was going to say I had that in mind. I knew that. And he was going to get upset. If I knew at the time that I made the vow that would cause a series of events that would end up making Rav Nachman upset, then I never would have made the vow. So there you go. That's an unforeseen circumstance, and there's a good petach, ushra lenafsheh, and he undid his vow. So ironically, by upsetting Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman could not find the petach, that itself, Rav Nachman's failure to find the petach was itself the petach that he used to get out of it. Okay, last story. Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi. Havale nidra lemishra. Atu lekamayehu derabanan. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi, he made a neder. He wanted to absolve, and he came before the Rabbanan. Amri le nadat adat hachi. So they asked him. We don't know what the vow is, but whatever. They said, "Did you have this in mind?" He says, Amar le'in. Yes, I did have that in mind. I can't use that as batuach. I knew that consequence. Adat hachi in. And how about this? Yes. Kamazimnin. And that happened several times, in fact. In other words, that's right. This happened several times. This happened so many times. They kept asking him questions to find some petach, and the rabbis were troubled, and they tried it all day long. They were going from the sun to the shade, then shade to the sun. Meaning, in the morning when it's cool out, they would sit in the sun. In the afternoon, when it gets hotter, they move to the shade. Later, towards evening, they move back and out into the sun. So it means that they were there from the morning all the way until the evening, kept moving to adjust the temperature, and they still couldn't find anything to help Rabbi Shimon. That's one version of the story. The other version says, they asked him, did you have in mind this particular fact when you made a vow? He said yes. and it occurred several times. And it says we're troubled for such a long time, but they still cannot find a solution. This Lishana Charina, that's in parentheses. If we look in the manuscripts, we'll see that both manuscripts do not have this section. So anyway, probably best to skip it. So Amaleh, finally, Botnit Bered Abba Shaul ben Botnit, the son of Shaul, the son of Botnit, named after their grandfather, said, Mina data data de mistared banan mitula de shimsham shimshal letula, Amar lela vishar yuhu. After a long day of investigating and trying to find something that he didn't have in mind when he made the vow, because he had everything in mind when he made the vow. Finally, one of the sages there said, when you made the vow, did you have in mind that by making the vow, you would cause so much trouble to the rabbis that they have to be kept moving from shade to sun and sun to shade, staying all day, trying to deal with your vow? He said, no, I would never have made the vow if I knew I was going to put you through so much trouble. And based on that, they were able to undo the vow, right? So based on the frustration of not being able to find the petach to undo the vow, that itself was the petach. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen v'amen.